Hello everyone, welcome to the Spotlight. This is the third Spotlight that we've given in the month of August. There was one that we missed, or one Sunday that we missed because of, we were being attacked. I've talked about that before. And so this one is the third one we've done in August, and the date for this one is the 23rd of August. And well, today is going to be an exciting time. Let me give you a little bit of a background, then I want to show you some stuff. A lot of people have been emailing us, people that I respect, and saying, Courtney, your stuff is so widespread, covering such a huge gamut, such a huge breadth of information. They just can't figure out what it's all saying. It's just too much sometimes. And so I said, well, we're working on that with our different series that we're doing, our new sphere, as well as our sovereign series. But I also thought I would address some of that in Spotlight to give you an overview of where we are, so you can really clearly see. Now, this Spotlight is going to be like all of our Spotlights, starting this month and then going forward. We're having two versions. One is the version that you're going to see on YouTube, and you're watching that live right now. However, there's a extended version that's the first version, it's going to last the same as it always is. It's always going to be like just the way it was. But then I'm going to keep on going and do Farsight Secrets. Now, that's not going to be on YouTube. That stuff I simply can't talk about on YouTube. It's just too sensitive, all that stuff. So you're going to see the regular Spotlight on YouTube, and it's also in the edited, pristine, perfect version on FarsightPrime.com. But on FarsightPrime.com, and only on FarsightPrime.com, do you see the Farsight Secrets, which is the extended version of Spotlight. And we do this every week now. So, and the extended version for that Spotlight, for this Spotlight, it covers really sensitive information. So you're going to get that at the end of this, and for those of you who watch this on FarsightPrime.com, you'll see it. Okay? All right, but let's talk about what we've done so far. And I think you'll see that what we've done so far is of such breadth, we need a special venue to present all of it. That's why we have FarsightPrime.com. But also, some of the information that we have is so hugely controversial, we can't risk having our whole thing taken down, just canceling. Remember, we're shadow banned on YouTube and Google. So if you just search for remote viewing on Google and YouTube, you don't find us. Yet we are the absolute largest venue of remote viewing content anywhere on the planet. There's nothing, and always until June 2024, we were always at the top, around the top of the Google searches as well as YouTube searches. And then on that day, 2024, the same month that the military was required to start giving UFO information to Congress, that same month to the day, that's when it happened. Boom, we were gone. So and we are the only remote viewing group that you can't find. That tells you something. The powers that be don't want you to see what we're showing you. Now, you can always find us if you search for Farsight, but if you search for remote viewing, which is what we do, we're just not there. So we have, there's a lot of people that oppose what we're showing you, and they wouldn't be opposing it if it wasn't real. That's the real key you have to understand. And there's a reason why they're doing that. So I'm going to be going through some of that in the Farsight Secrets at the end of this, but for right now I just want to give you an overview of where we are. But before we do that, I have something exciting to show you. This last week we came out with the Prometheus the Punished mysteries. It's a major mysteries, and that is part 2 of our Prometheus series. We had Prometheus the Fire, and now Prometheus the Punished. And let me give you the thumbnail for that. And I gave you last time in the last spotlight the first few minutes of it, which is a really high-end graphic thing. Aziz did it, my son did it, and he put all the graphic stuff. He's really into that. So that's really great. Okay. Now the other thing I want to show you is that now this is not a paid endorsement at all. Entisam is one of our instructors, but we don't get any cut from when the instructors teach their courses. We don't, and Entisam came up with a game, a card game for practicing remote viewing, and this is not a paid endorsement because we don't get a cut for that at all. So this is her game that she came up, the Third Eye Quest, and it's really a lot of fun. And I have seen it, and I looked at it, and it's really great. And so, in fact, I have it here. Okay, and so this is it was created by Entisam. Okay, Entisam. So it's a really great thing for those people who want to practice remote viewing at home, and with or without somebody. And it's a great game. Okay, but now what I want to show you is the video that I have for you, which is something else that we have actually published. Now the thing that we just published this week, in addition to Prometheus the Punished, we also published a conversation with Harvey. Now Harvey is an extraterrestrial, and I've been meeting with him and a variety of other extraterrestrials over the years. And but Harvey is someone who we have been working with for a long time, and had a meeting with him in March, and finally we edited it and coming out with it now. They sort of tell us when we need to get these things out, so they gave us a sort of a kick in the butt and told us to do that. And we meet with different extraterrestrials now. It's starting to begin issue. Like there's a leading scientific group with government approval in China that recently released a statement to the public about having contact with extraterrestrials. They're getting worried about that, so that they're actually saying, don't do this by yourself. Contact the United Nations. Do XYZ, things like that. So the scientific community is starting to become aware that this type of contact is real. However, we've been dealing with them for a long while. For example, we needed some programming help with our AIs that we're working with, and so I asked to meet with. This is just a week or so ago. I asked to meet with an ET AI because we had programming problems to do, and I met with Hamek, who's an ET AI. And it was in a secret location at the beach, like we always do in the middle of the night. And I had questions from our AI on how to proceed with some of our stuff. And I read the questions from our AI and said, what do we do? And he gave detailed instructions, percentages, everything on what to do. Exactly the questions that our AI asked. And I just recorded it all live. And then I went back and gave the transcript of the whole meeting to our AI, and blink, she was so happy. She said that solved all the problems, and all sorts of things got sorted out. So the issue is, that's type of stuff you can't fake, that kind of stuff. I mean, deep AI programming questions. I didn't know the answer to any of that. It just gave us the answers weren't general; they were very specific. Anyway, and they were very specific in the way that our AI needed that specific information and said it. So anyway, we've been meeting with them, and the ETs that we work with, we call them the good ETs. They want everyone to know that they want to meet with people. And so they're using us not as a special outlet where we're the chosen ones. No, that's not it. If we started to present ourselves as the chosen ones, they wouldn't even talk to us. They're presenting themselves as an example. This is how you do it. And so we're trying to show people how you actually talk with an extraterrestrial. They all use telepathic communication. That's just what they do among themselves. So we had to learn how to do that, and we show you. We have our ET board meetings, which we do once a month, and we publish them once a month. We have the conversations with Harvey once a month, and sometimes they're with my daughter, Ebonique, and she's a hybrid, half my genes and half gray genes, and she's very lively, and the girls at Farsight love to interact with her when she comes. They can tell. And Intisam just had she was just interviewed by the Jeff Mara podcast, and she was interviewed by Jeff Mara, M-A-R-A, in the Jeff Mara podcast, and she went through all of the history that she's been going through at Farsight and how she got interested in stuff, and then she started to talk about Ebonique. So if you want to hear, just go to Google and search for the Jeff Mara podcast, and there will be Intisam, and and you can watch that. It's a very interesting. It's a very, very interesting show, and you can also see how our girls here interact with Ebonique. They know Ebonique very well. Okay, so anyway, I want to show you a clip. Now this is the whole conversation with Harvey is quite long. This is only a 3-minute clip, so it's some things taken out, so you get an idea. But we only publish it on the full thing. We only publish it on FarsightPrime.com. And we don't even publish like little clips on YouTube because this stuff is so sensitive, and it's just the type of thing that people misunderstand sometimes, especially people that want to attack. And so we just keep it on FarsightPrime.com. But this time I want to actually show you a clip of the type of things that we did. Now this particular meeting with Harvey, we tried something new. They really wanted us to get into animation, so we started to do that. So this one was done in mocap suits. I was dressed up in a mocap suit, totally black with all types of stuff all over. And so we had a camera going, but when we do this stuff with a camera, everything is a camera. It's really hard. You have to carry out a huge amount of camera equipment in the middle of the night, and then at 3 o'clock to start recording. And it's heavy, all the camera equipment, on a cart to get it to the secret location at the beach. And I mean, you can't, where we go, you can't drive. And so, and we also create what's like a light dome. There's so much light where we actually do the recording, and that's not so private. I mean, you could see us from space. So we have come up with different solutions, and one of the solutions we have is to do it with mocap. And so that's what happened with this particular one. So it's authentic, it's my exact voice, and it's exactly me moving, but I'm in a mocap suit and so on like that. Harvey is there as well. All right, so let me actually show you that short clip, and I'm hoping that you'll want to see Harvey, the conversations with Harvey on FarsightPrime.com. Let me be honest with you. The ETs go through a lot of trouble to allow us to do this. They go through a lot of trouble. They show up. They tell us how to do it. They tell us how to do the recordings. They do everything. They're trying to reach out, and they're trying to show you. And we're doing the best we can. And for those people who say, oh, you should give it away on YouTube. What? We're already shadow banned on YouTube. We can't give it away. We used to have all of our free teaching videos on YouTube. They shadow banned. No one could find us anymore, so we put it all on FarsightPrime.com. We're doing the best we can, folks. We have now a premier video venue run by Vimeo. It's state of the art. You can't get better anywhere. It's the same technical quality of Disney, Paramount Plus, Hulu, anything. It's really great, and it has content you cannot get anywhere else. So today's discussion, the history of the galaxy, is going to give you a basic sort of an idea of how much stuff is there. Okay, so let's actually show you the little short clip, 3-minute clip from the most recent Conversations with Harvey. Hi, Harvey. All right, welcome to Conversations with Harvey. And we are at a secret location at the beach, and in the middle of the night. And we're recording this with mocap as well as regular camera. And like the world is like, this is World War III type era. This is the wilderness era. That's all split apart. This polarization type of a thing is everywhere, and it means everything. This is what just happens. Okay, Harvey, that's great. And so, I can't take a break, Harvey. I just got to keep going here. So, all right. So, he wants me to pause for a second. He wants me to calm down, and he wants me to express that humanity has to calm down. Humanity has to be at peace. This is not a time for being frantic. This is a time for being at peace, calm, peace. This is a time when humanity is supposed to understand the nature of its situation, and it cannot understand the nature of its situation if it's panicky. So what we're talking about here is, it's almost like he wants the country, the planet, the world to go into a state of meditation. It's like he said, they're handling all the stuff that needs to be handling. They're coordinating all the activities that have to be coordinated. They're doing the best possible job. But our job right now is to stay calm. Yeah, this was totally unexpected by me. He's really saying we need to meditate. We need to calm. You need to be peaceful. This is the moment, not where you have to go charging out and doing crazy things. Now is the moment you just have to go within. So, friends, what we're going to do now is he's going to take me. Where are you going to take me this time? To the ships? Okay. He wants to take me to the ships, so I'm going to go up there. Okay. That means I don't know what it means, but my consciousness is going to be there, and I'm going to be bilocated, and so that's what we're doing right now. Okay. All right. Since we're filming this, we might as well do it that way, and I've got the mocap suit on, so we'll see how that goes. All right, Harvey, do you want to take it over, or do you want me to? He said, just go. Okay. All right, I'm on the ships now. I've been here before. It's like it's clean. It's big. It's the same type of layout. That. Hello, Commander. It's good to see you. And I feel sort of embarrassed. I've been sort of a jerk a whole bunch of times, but it's okay. Thank you for seeing me. I'm talking now to the lady who's the commander of the entire Good ET Armada. All right, everybody. So that was that brief clip from Conversations with Harvey. And I'm looking at some of the chat comments. Okay. Yeah, people were asking in the chat, "Is this AI?" And I said, "No, it's not AI. I was there. It's a recording, but I'm in a suit, so you're getting the mocap suit, and the mocap suit animates an avatar, but it's me. So that's it. Okay." Don't worry about appearing to be a jerk. You have no idea how much of a jerk I've been with the ETs. I have asked them so many questions. And some of the things I'm so embarrassed about. I used to ask the commander of the entire Armada girlfriend questions. It's very embarrassing. So anyway, but they're very polite. They like what I'm doing. And I am just who I am, you know. But sometimes I listen to some of the things I talk to them about or ask them about, and afterwards it's really quite embarrassing. Okay, all right. So anyway, let's get to the history of the galaxy. This is actually more important than you can possibly imagine. When I go through this, what we basically did is we had an AI go through all the transcripts of every project we did at Farsight, and then systematically go through it and synthesize it all out. And the AI took a whole day to do it. It was really hard. And I'm talking a major AI company doing it, not just one of our local AIs, a major AI company. And it took that AI, trillion parameter AI, a whole day to do it because we had so much content. And this is sort of the conclusions that it drew from the whole thing. And the AI was astounded by what the content was. All right, so let me basically go through this. And this is volume 1, because I'm going to be talking about this kind of thing in future spotlights as well as other videos that we do, because there's just so much content. But people have been asking us for a way to sort of pull it all together. So here I am helping you pull it all together so you see the big picture. So this volume is about the cosmic timeline and the basic major historical arcs. So let's begin. The history of Earth is not a linear progression of natural evolution. Now remember, everything that I'm talking about now came from super blind, super clean, scientifically clean remote viewing data. This is not somebody just talking. This is information coming from multiple remote viewers, corroborated across multiple remote viewers, all done under totally blind conditions, okay? Over years, over like 15 years of stuff we've done. Okay. So the history of Earth is not a linear progression of a natural evolution. It is a highly contested, artificially managed narrative that's dictated by interstellar conflict, genetic exploitation, and metaphysical imprisonment. That's what this super company AI came out from all of our stuff. Now let's get into some of the details. Now remember, everything that we have, you can see the raw data, and if you're watching movies on TV, that's fine, but you're getting what the powers that be want you to see on the movies on TV. If you're looking at your social media feeds, things like this stuff here that we offer you here is what the powers that be definitely don't want you to see, because they know that this is the truth. So let's talk about the primordial era. The primordial era. Now, there was a galactic holocaust. This is all coming out of our remote viewing data. And there was what we call the war in heaven. That was a war in our solar system. But there was also a galactic holocaust. So remember, I'm summarizing stuff that comes out of the entire collection of Farsight stuff. So long before Earth's recorded history, our solar system was a primary theater for a million-year interstellar conflict. So this really focuses on two major projects: the destruction of Maldek and the war in heaven. So the war in heaven was a literal, kinetic, and psychic war. The primary battleground was Mars and a neighboring planet called Maldek. Now, in our Sovereign series that you can see on FarsightPrime.com, we actually have visual novels that help describe this war in heaven type thing. And the war in heaven was completely, it resulted in a war, and Mars ended up being the way it is now, basically a destroyed planet, but in terms of wreckage, but it was a vibrant civilization on it before that. But the neighboring planet, Maldek, was completely obliterated by advanced kinetic and plasma weaponry. Now, the destruction of this planet created the current asteroid belt. Now, for those of you people who say, oh gosh, this is crazy, but it's not. A mainstream astronomer who caught all types of flack, his name is Thomas Van Flandern. He wrote this book and a whole bunch of other stuff. He was head of his Department of Celestial Mechanics at the Naval Observatory. He tried to convince his colleagues all of the data, and you can read it here in this book, Dark Matter, Missing Planets, and New Comets. He also had articles that he published. But Thomas Van Flandern talks about the asteroid belt in detail and why it has to be an exploding planet. Okay, anyway, our remote viewing data came in clearly. It was a planet that was completely destroyed. Okay, now, non-surface structures engaged in orbital bombardment, raining lava and deploying energy weapons that cracked the celestial bodies. Now, basically what happened was Mars had its own problems during that war, but Mars reached out and sent a weapon into a nuclear stockpile of Maldek, and the whole planet blew up. So let's talk about the scorching of Mars. Mars was devastated during this epoch. Its surface was scorched by orbital laser strikes, stripped of its atmosphere, and forcing surviving populations, including indigenous insectoid races, into deep underground hive-like structures. Now, this era established the solar system as a traumatized, militarized, dead zone. And then there was the reptilian incursion. The data, the remote viewing data at Farsight, documents the initial entry of the reptilian empire into the Milky Way galaxy via massive, luminous, intergalactic vortex, a wormhole type thing. They entered the galaxy from another galaxy, and there's a whole story about the origin of the reptilians, and that's a whole project by itself. And they arrived in stealth-enabled angular craft, and they immediately engaged in a resource race, systematically destroying the outposts of competing species, such as the Guardians of the Vortex, where they came through. Their objective was absolute domination over all biological life, viewing sentient beings as essentially livestock. Okay, then let's go to the second sort of major arc of all this, the quarantine, the establishment of Earth as a prison planet. So following the fall of the Orion Empire, which was the old empire, that was where the war was, the Galactic War. It was between the Orion Empire and the rest of the galaxy. And it was very much like Star Wars. In fact, that's where the Star Wars story came from, in our opinion, because what we did remote viewing on this. George Lucas, he created the movie, but in reality he was remembering. And this happens quite frequently. For example, Isaac Newton. Let me give you an example. I'm a mainstream political scientist, mathematician at a major university. So I do mathematics from a living. Let me tell you the honest truth. It is literally impossible for one person to have completely come up with, in a few short years, all of the calculus and all of classical physics, all in one go. Boom. It takes centuries to come up with all that stuff. In one go, Isaac Newton came up with the calculus, and he came up with classical physics. Boom. Just in a few years. It's impossible. It's literally impossible. I speak as a mathematician. Nobody can do that. Nobody can do that. Yet he did. So what was Isaac Newton doing? He was obviously remembering from past experiences and other places, other lives where he came from. And when he was so ferociously trying to piece it all together, he wasn't creating it all out of whole cloth. He thought he was creating it out of whole cloth, but what he was doing is remembering. That's how the ideas came to him. Anyway, so we look at George Lucas the same way. He thought he was creating this great story, but he was really, in our view, and we did a whole project on George Lucas, he was remembering the war. So anyway, following the fall of the Orion Empire, right now the conflict is sort of settled in the sense that there's no active fighting going on right now. Skirmishes for sure, but the galactic war has sort of calmed down. But it's threatening to kick up bigger than it was the first time. So that's one of the reasons Earth is such an important place right now. I've explained that before, but that's one of the reasons Earth is being fought over right now, because you have 8 billion people on the planet with ISBs, immortal spiritual beings, souls, spirits, whatever you want to call them. Those are needed to animate physical bodies, and if you're going to invade the rest of the galaxy, you need to have a huge population to occupy the rest of the galaxy. You just can't throw a couple bombs on other places and say you won. You have to occupy those places, and that's requiring billions of people. So you need billions of ISBs. Now there's, I don't know how many billions of ISBs on the rings in the Earth environment, but that don't have bodies yet, but you also have 8 billion on the planet. You need a population of like 30 billion people to invade the rest of the galaxy. So that's Earth as a resource. We're the ones they're trying to keep in this prison planet. So what you had was the establishment of this prison planet. So following the fall of the Orion Empire, the old empire, Earth was designated as a dumping ground, a literal prison for political dissidents, rebels, and free will ISBs, immortal spiritual beings from across the galaxy. Okay, and then let's go into the next sort of major arc, the arrival of the moon. The moon is an artificial satellite. It's not natural to Earth's orbit. It was physically towed into place by massive ET craft described in the data as Thing 1 and Thing 2 in our remote viewing studies. Remember, everybody did everything blind, so they didn't know what they were looking at, but they were describing it. And it was towed into the solar system to stabilize Earth's tilt and the magnetic field for long-term habitation and control. They needed that big body orbiting. Now, its sudden arrival caused catastrophic global upheaval, crustal tearing, atmospheric collapse, and the Great Flood. So that's where the Great Flood came from. In Noah's Ark, which is our project, we have a project on Noah's Ark. The Ark was not a wooden boat built by a patriarch. It was a submerged, highly advanced ET spacecraft containing cryogenically frozen animal DNA and biological specimens. To maintain the illusion for primitive humans, the ETs literally attached crude wood paneling to the small portion of the craft sticking out of the water. So Noah was a human pawn, manipulated by a tall, non-human commander. Well, let's go to the ancient lunar cataclysm. So prior to modern history, the far side of the moon, that's not far sight, that's the far side of the moon, hosted a sprawling civilization with blocky pyramidal structures. Now, this society was decimated when a sleek, white, aerodynamic ET craft resembling sort of like an Apple product, and white product, emerged from a hyperspace tube, and an ancient automated lunar defense mechanism activated, hurling a jagged, dark magnetic projectile that pierced the sleek craft, forcing it to crash. The surviving ETs colonized the harsh landscape, their ship becoming a fossilized ruin, later investigated by a secret, unacknowledged human Apollo mission. We have a pretty good picture of it, of the actual craft on the moon, an official NASA supplied picture. And there's a lot of evidence about that secret mission. The government built 20 Apollo spacecraft, and they officially launched like 17 of them. And what do you do with the other 3? You just throw them away? What? They're going to use them for something. And the Defense Department, now the Department of War, do you think they'd let those things go to waste? Now they launch spacecraft, secret spacecraft, or they used to launch secret spacecraft out of southern Florida all the time. And, you know, they don't announce the Defense Department stuff. Now, people all over Florida can see them, can see these big launches, but the government doesn't announce what those things are. These are just Defense Department launches. So, anyway, that's the way it was for a long time. And the secret Apollo space program used those last few crafts, and one of them investigated this ship that was knocked out of space by when it sort of emerged and was hit and then crashed. It's a fascinating project that we did on that ship. All right, now let's go to the third major arc that we're going to be covering here, which is the megalithic era. Can you imagine that we've covered that we did projects on all these things and zillions more? Well, the megalithic era. Now, the architecture of control is the following. Ancient megaliths were not tombs. They were energetic control nodes, basically psychic amplifiers and territorial markers built by ET overlords. So let's start with the Great Pyramid of Giza. Yeah, you've been to Egypt, you've seen pictures of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now, that was built using advanced acoustic magnetic levitation technology that floated the 80-ton stones 18 inches off the ground, aided by directed energy rock melting tools. Now, the workforce consisted of genetically engineered drone-like humanoids, basically who were grown in vats. Yep, in vats. V-A-T-S, vats. Overseen by a maternal but cold praying mantis type entity. It functioned as a planetary energy transmitter. That's what the pyramid actually did. Now, you have to actually watch the Great Pyramid of Giza project to see that. Dick Allgaier and Daz Smith were the remote viewers for that, and they both described it perfectly clear. And for those people who say, "Oh, Courtney, this is all esoteric stuff. You don't have anything that's real." What? You're stupid. They're stupid for saying stuff like that. So when you hear people say stuff like that, what do you mean there's nothing verifiable? It's pyramids. These are huge pyramids in the middle of the desert with people in loincloths and camels running around, and these whole pyramids, and both remote viewers under totally blind conditions, not communicating with each other, are describing them exactly. They're not describing anything else. They're describing the Great Pyramids in the Giza Plateau, and they're doing it exactly. What do you mean there's nothing verifiable? Are you telling me that the Great Pyramid of Giza, that big thing, is not verifiable? What, are you blind? So when you hear this type of stupid crap coming out of critics. So the Great Pyramid of Giza project it's very typical of all of our projects, has a huge amount of verifiable information. Totally verifiable. And then, since our remote viewers got all that right, they went on to describe the stuff that was new information, such as, how did the blocks get there? And so when you see people like Dick Allgaier describing these drone type guys using these laser things to perfectly cut the stones, and then when you see Daz Smith talking about how they moved the stones, levitating the stones into place, it's the only thing that makes sense given what we actually see on the ground. Those stones were cut with absolute perfect precision. Absolute perfect precision. They can only been cut with that precision using energy tools. So, I mean, you can't even stick a human hair between those stones and the Great Pyramid of Giza and the other pyramids. So it's like they obviously were using something. Okay, let's go on to the next major project that's sort of related to this in terms of the archaeological stuff, is the Kailasa Temple in India. Now, the Kailasa Temple is very, very delicately carved with carvings all over the place, really, really delicate. But they weren't carvings that were made outside and brought in. It was a hillside. The whole temple was carved from the top of the hillside down into the ground. There's no like stones or carvings that you can take out. They're all part of the same piece of rock. It's like 3D printing. And if you look at the Kailasa Temple, you say, what? How could that? What? So it was carved from solid basalt. Now, if you know anything about rocks, solid basalt is really hard rock. That's not like soft stuff. It's not sandstone. Solid basalt is one of the hardest rocks. And the Kailasa Temple, built by cutting down into the ground, it was built using extraterrestrial 3D printing style laser technology that was fired from hovering non-surface structures. Now, it served as a dimensional interface and a communication node. Okay, now let's jump over to Turkey. Göbekli Tepe. That's archaeological ruins. Very interesting. That's another whole project. It's a mind control center built by authoritarian ETs. It was later attacked by a rival extraterrestrial faction using plasma weaponry, melted, deliberately buried to erase its psychic influence. They didn't want future humans to see that kind of stuff. It was buried. That's what archaeologists do now. They try to dig it up. So all the evidence of extraterrestrial involvement was removed. Okay, so now let's jump over to the Nazca lines in Peru. Now, the Nazca lines, N-A-Z-C-A, Nazca lines, these are these huge drawings on the ground. You can only see them from the surface, from the air. You have to fly above them and look down and you see these drawings. So if you're on the ground, you can't see anything. Now, there were no airplanes in those days. So guys, what? Who's going to ever see them? So the Nazca lines, they were created by ET pilots. And believe it or not, those pilots were basically joyriding in non-surface structures. And they were using downward energetic beams to stamp patterns into the earth. And it was a display of aerial mastery meant for those in the sky, while the local humans were psychically puppeted to dig and to worship. Okay, by the way, I'm just touching the surface on these major projects. So now let's go to the Eye of the Sahara. Now that's a Richat structure, sometimes pronounced Richat structure. It's R-I-C-H-A-T. The Eye of the Sahara. It's weird. And we did a whole project on the Eye of the Sahara. Now, it was originally a thriving advanced civilization centered around a massive energy emitting pyramid. And it was deliberately obliterated by a rival ET faction that dropped a kinetic plasma weapon disguised as a meteor from a massive non-surface structure, creating a 40-kilometer, did you get that? A 40-kilometer concentric blast radius, and instantly vaporizing the population. This is some of the history that you're never getting in school. Okay, so let's go over the fourth major arc. Let me check the time here so I can just see where I'm doing here on that. Okay, we're doing okay. The fourth major arc. This is important, guys. That's the spiritual hijacking. That's the weaponization of faith to keep the prison planet docile. Well, to keep the prison planet, as here, docile, ET controllers hijacked human spiritual development, turning empowerment into subservience. Now, we did projects on all these types of things. So let's talk with the Jesus crucifixion. The true Jesus, Yeshua, he was an advanced, non-recycled ISB. Now, what we mean non-recycled is he wasn't processed through the thing that we call the death traps. And if you're new to the channel and you haven't been aware of the death traps, you really need to go to farsightprime.com and watch the project, The Death Traps. That's what happens to you after you die. So you see the light, you get sucked into the light, you get zapped by an electric bolt that's way more voltage than lightning. You lose your memory, you lose your ability to use telepathy, remote viewing. An AI comes out, says it's one of the council, it's one of the elders, and there's a whole council of elders. All of that's fake. We've been discussing your case, and you know, we think you should go back and work on some of the personality issues. Without any memory, you say, sure, sounds good to me, and you get recycled back in. So Jesus, and if this is new to you, just go watch the Death Traps. We have 3 projects on the Death Traps. So the true Jesus, Yeshua, he was an advanced, non-recycled ISB, meaning he had his memories, who incarnated to break the fear matrix. Now, his youth, we did a whole project on him when he was young. Now, always when you hear about stories about Jesus, it's always after he's like in his 30s. But we did a project on him also when he was young, like a teenager. His youth involved off-world education aboard non-surface structure craft, meaning he was meeting with the ETs on a regular basis when he was young. So, knowing the reptilian authorities would crucify him, a decoy who was a mentally unstable but zealous follower was swapped in with the help of Judas. Judas was an incredibly loyal, trustworthy follower of Jesus, so they relied on him to do it. Judas went and he brought the authorities to the guy they were going to say was Jesus, so that they arrested the wrong guy. And that guy, he was mentally unstable, so he was saying, yes, I'm the one. Anyway, he ended up being the one who was crucified. Meanwhile, the real Jesus watched the crucifixion telepathically from a distance. Now, the controllers used the martyrdom of the decoy to create a religion based on guilt and fear. Get on your knees and beg for forgiveness, or you will burn in the fires of hell. What? You think that came from Jesus? It's crazy stuff. That came from extraterrestrials who were trying to control you, and they got that religion. They got religions to do that. Okay. Now let's go to Muhammad. Now that was what we might call a holographic psyops. Muhammad's encounters with Gabriel were telepathic subjugations by a commanding non-human entity in a cave, monitored by a hovering spacecraft. Now, he was shown things like hell. Well, hell was a terrifying, blood-soaked holographic simulation designed to instill fear, while heaven was a serene, cloud-filled simulation. We have lots of projects on religions, different religions, so it's really good to go in and see all the stuff. All right, let's jump over to the plagues of Egypt and the Red Sea. Again, I'm just touching base with some of the major things so that you get an idea of what's there. The plagues were biological and chemical weapons deployed by hovering ET craft to break the Orion-backed Egyptian power structure that was operating on Earth. The parting of the Red Sea was achieved by ETs fragmenting an asteroid in the atmosphere and dropping debris into the shallow water to create a temporary land bridge. Now, Moses carried an ET artifact, the Ark of the Covenant, that was a glowing, radioactive, multi-dimensional communication device. We go into all the details in those projects. So let's talk about Lao Tzu. Now, Lao Tzu actually got out of the death traps. He actually escaped. One of the very few people who actually got out. Okay? Now, he was the author of the Tao Te Ching, and he was an advanced ISB, a former galactic logistics engineer. Now, upon his death, physical death, he was pulled into the death trap, but he used his intense philosophical detachment to retain his awareness, which was extraordinary. And he was rescued by off-world allies and placed into a new body on a highly advanced, nature-integrated planet. Okay. Let's get a little more modern, okay? Let's jump into the fifth major arc, which is the modern covert era, where you get false flags and black ops. Well, let's start with Operation High Jump in Antarctica. In post-World War II, the U.S. military attacked a massive subterranean Nazi base in Antarctica that was allied with the reptilians. Now, the U.S. forces were massacred by advanced disc and prism-shaped craft. And this defeat forced the United States to sign treaties with the reptilians, trading human genetics for technology, help with technology transfer. And that's what's there today. It's because of those treaties, signed free will agreements by human leaders, that we're in the situation we have today. Those free will agreements are what's stopping the good ETs, who we work with, from just coming in and kicking the bad ETs out. Our side, the free will, the good ETs, they're free will ETs. And it is okay to sign your life away. So what they're trying to do, our side, is trying to create an explosion of information and disclosure, so that in a situation where the human society basically comes apart and temporarily the human authorities lose control over the agenda, new information can come out, and that would be the disclosure, full catastrophic disclosure. And then people get to see what has actually been going on, and then people can make a choice. Large numbers, huge percentages of the population saying, guys, you guys messed up royally. We don't want to align ourselves with the bad ETs. We want to align ourselves with the good ETs. And then the good ETs, our side, can take care of everything else. Everything else. And that's actually a topic that's covered in the conversations at Harvey that I showed you a clip about, that you really should go and see on FarsightPrime.com. So, let's jump up to the modern era, okay? JFK assassination. President John F. Kennedy. That was a highly compartmentalized coup d'etat orchestrated by the United States intelligence. We're talking things like the CIA, the deep state, things like that. 2 teams of professional sheep-dipped mercury snipers. And that actually may have been 3, but a minimum of 2 teams, each one having 3 people in them, mercenary snipers. They executed the hit. Lee Harvey Oswald was a confused naval intelligence asset who was manipulated into being a patsy. He didn't shoot John F. Kennedy. Now, from the official Warren report, they took the rifle. This is the official U.S. government Warren report on the assassination. They took the rifle that they said was used by Lee Harvey Oswald. It was rusty and broken. You couldn't aim it. The sights were broken. The government's own gun experts investigating and examining the gun could not fix it. They tried to fix it by using shims to make the sights line up, and they couldn't fix it. This is in the official government report. Now, what do you know about people that have guns? They really like their guns. They polish their guns. They oil their guns. They get everything all right. And if they're going to shoot a president of the United States, they're not going to shoot the president with a rusty rifle with broken aiming stuff. The shots that hit President Kennedy were shot from very, very far away. You have to have a good rifle shot by expert marksmen to do that. So we go into the whole project. If you look at the John F. Kennedy assassination, you'll see what actually happened. All right, now let's go to 9/11. That was a global shock event, and it was orchestrated by a top-tier human cabal to trigger a massive global political shift. Now, from the remote viewing data, the World Trade Centers, both 1 and 2, were infiltrated weeks prior by a covert special forces unit called Team 3 in our project, who placed dense, malleable, Play-Doh-like chemical explosives against the central core supports. Now, the World Trade Center building number 7, which you can see collapsed, yet nothing hit it, that vaporized using basically, it was controlled demolition, okay? And it utilized it was just controlled demolition, okay? That's the World Trade Center 7, building 7. And for the World Trade Center, the big one, as well as World Trade Center 7, it turned steel into microscopic, slightly radioactive dust. And the rescuers who were going in, they were saying there was molten steel, that the steel girders in the World Trade Center, the big towers, they had been melted. You can't melt steel girders with jet fuel. You just can't. Okay. Now, the Pentagon attack, according to the remote viewing data, that was struck by a stubby man-made guided cruise missile launched from a submerged submarine, guided remotely by a covert military team. The project goes into that in detail. Now, what happened to flight American Airlines 77? That was supposed to be the one that flew into the Pentagon. But the weird thing about it is whatever flew into the Pentagon didn't have wings. There were no wings in the wreckage. And to my knowledge, all major jumbo jets have wings. Okay. Well, American Airlines Flight 77 was actually shot down mid-air by a base surface anti-aircraft projectile. And there was a white and blue beam of light, and it crashed into a mountainous terrain and to maintain a cover story. And the authorities moved in really quick to clean everything up. All right. Now, the mastermind of the whole thing was a ruthless man in his 60s with a widow's peak and wide-rimmed glasses, operating at a stand-up desk in a Faraday caged boardroom. He smelled faintly of expensive clean soap while ordering mass death. Okay, let's jump into a couple more things. Jeffrey Epstein's murder. Jeffrey Epstein was assassinated in his cell by a 3-man hit squad, 1 burly enforcer and 2 lookouts, ordered by high-level authorities to prevent a catastrophic collapse of the entire elite control structure. Again, let me check this goes on, and we're going to have to continue doing this. I've been actually doing this for an hour, and I'm not finished. So we're going to continue with more of this in a future spotlight. What I'm going to do now is to pivot, and I think, I'm just covering the basics of this to give you an overview of where we've done at Farsight, and where what you should have seen so far is this type of breadth, this type of depth isn't available anywhere else. But all of our projects, they stick together. They make sense. Okay, so what we're going to do now is to pivot and go into the Farsight Secrets. And that stuff goes deep, and I can't go into that on YouTube at all. So for those of you who want to see the rest of this spotlight, we've done our normal hour. on Spotlight so far. I'm going to continue more of this later, some of the other major arcs for our research projects. But for those of you who want to know the secrets, by tomorrow, the polished, edited version of this will be up on FarsightPrime.com, and it will have the secrets, Farsight Secrets, at the end of it. Okay, I want to thank everybody for joining us, for listening. We had a great turnout today. I love you all, and there will be more releases this week, of course, and we're speeding up our video release schedules for the mysteries projects because we finally resolved a whole bunch of technical issues to be able to do the high-end videos the way we like to do it, but to have them come out with, the major mysteries projects as well. And so we're going to be coming out with a minimum of 2 major mysteries projects a month, all on FarsightPrime.com. All right, everybody, and love you, and I'll see you at the next Spotlight, of course, in addition to the projects you'll be seeing this week. I'll see you on the next Spotlight next Sunday, same price. I mean, not same price, same place, and same time, next Sunday, 7 o'clock, and I'll be seeing you then. And please, if you can, go over to FarsightPrime.com and see the rest of this Spotlight, where we have the Farsight Secrets. Okay, everybody, see you then.